I was born in 1958, which means I was basically a child through most of the 60s in the United States, chowing down on my Tony the Tiger Frosted Flakes and watching TV. While the rest of you were apparently having much more interesting things to do on the beaches of India. Especially during Christmas time, you'd have all of these commercials and all of these specials, and there would be the Happy Family Christmas, you know? And then I would look over at my family and go, that's not so happy TV family Christmas. So the story I want to tell you about happens in 1970 when I was 12. And my brother and I were told that we were going to go down to Salem, Oregon, about an hour's drive away from where we lived in Portland, and spend the weekend with my father's family, which is great because, you know, it's awesome. My cousin's parents had a cool house. It was a split level when that was on trend. And the best thing about this house was that the furniture matched. It was all white, all the furniture was white, and all matched, and the rug it was all white. It was a shag rug when that was really on trend, and then they had this cathedral ceiling, and they had this gigantic 20 or 30 foot Christmas tree that had all white lights on it. So we're talking, this was the TV family Christmas house. And I was going, great, yeah, this will be fun, we'll be there. Besides which, my cousins were going to be there. Now I have an older cousin and a younger cousin. So it goes cousin, me, younger cousin, my brother. And my oldest cousin was kind of queen of everybody, boss of everybody, charge of the program, charge of the games, charge of everything. And that was okay, you just surrendered yourself to her. And I'm going to ask for a glass of water if I might have one. And she was great, she was awesome, she made things happen. She just gave up arguing with her and went with the program. So we're piling out of the car and it's super great, we're going to be there. Thank you very much. And we're going to play with my cousins, only to discover that in September, I'm so choked up, only to discover that sometime in the month of September, my older cousin had come home from high school one day, walked into her bedroom and shut her door. And basically hadn't opened it up since then. So Christmas was actually staring at the clocked door. But that's okay, I had my other cousin, she was nice, we could play with her. But her technique at this point in time was a little bit of a new game. Her game was to just not come home. Spend as much time as possible at her friends' houses, nighttime, daytime, whatever it took. So instead of playing with my cousins, I had closed door, empty bedroom. That's okay, that's fine. We still had a fun uncle. My father's younger brother, he was great. He was kind of young, he was great at roughhousing, he was very funny, he was just kind of outrageous. And he was a lot of fun to hang out with for about a half an hour, 45 minutes. He had the Kitts family trigger anger. So it was really great for those 45 minutes, and then all of a sudden it was over. And believe me, it was over. But those 45 minutes, they were worth it. Problem is, he was in the middle of separating and getting divorced. So he spent the entire weekend walking around with a glass of scotch in his hand. So I'm telling you, fun uncle didn't show up. But it's okay, we can live with that. My grandmother was there, my father's mother was there, and she was always good for craft projects. She was a school teacher, she was a lot of fun, she was interesting, she was the family matron, everybody loved my grandmother. The problem was that her second husband, actually her third marriage, second husband, and my grandmother kind of likes being married a lot. This has led to some very bad life choices for her. But at this point in time, her second husband, third marriage, he was actually a fairly nice guy, I'm told, been diagnosed with something that was going to kill him in a couple of years, and he was already well in his career. His grandpa lump in the chair. Well, it's okay. I mean, I never really knew him that well anyway, but she wasn't good for art projects, let's put it that way. She was a little preoccupied with her pending widowhood. So that's okay. We can deal with that. So there was my aunt, my father's younger sister, and of all my relatives, I think she's the one I loved the most, because when she looked at you, when she brought the beam, the power beam onto you, she saw you and only you. And she was wise, and she was funny, and she was smart, and then when she had that power beam on you, you knew you were something special. Of course, the beam didn't really show up all that often, but it was great when it was there. She had a secret that week, and I didn't know about it at the time, which could account for the reason why I didn't get a lot of that time with her that weekend. She was about to leave her husband and her children, and because she'd gone to graduate school, gotten a degree, and a boyfriend. Which, actually, I don't blame her for, because it turned out, and talking about stuff I didn't learn until very recently, her husband was kind of into that poly relationship thing. Had several relationships on the side. And she was kind of like, she knew about it, and was sort of like semi-participating with that. And I think that this guy that she had met, and I met him later on, he was a really good guy. I liked him a lot. And I mean, you know what? If you got a guy that's like, he's got nothing else to do but you. I mean, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't pick that? So I'm really glad that she was able to find that place for her. And like I said, I liked him. He was a photographer. He taught me some stuff about photography. The only problem with him was, he was African American, which wasn't a problem for me. But this is where I found out that my grandfather and my father were racists. But that's in the future. Well, we're not going to talk. So she's a little distracted. I mean, whether or not she's wrestling with this decision to leave her family, not to mention the fact that her mother's kind of crying into the mashed potatoes, and her other brother's wandering around with this angry glass of scotch in his hand. I can't imagine why she's distracted, but that's okay. We're kind of down to her husband now, and who I kind of call the not-so-funny uncle. And here's a little backstory about this guy. And this is one of the first times I've said it this publicly. When I was 6 years old, my dad was trying to raise my brother and I to be compliant, to be well-behaved, to say sir and ma'am, and nothing but Mr. and Mrs. last name. I think that my parents were school teachers, and they were really invested in wanting nice, compliant children so that everybody else would go, oh, Bruce and Maggie's children, aren't they just the sweetest things? Now, the problem with my father's project here is that he had me. And I was not born to be compliant. That was not on the list of gifts that was given to me as I was walking into this world. My not-so-funny uncle at this family event that was like way back in the past, remember I'm 6 years old, comes to me and says, you need to come to the bathroom with me. Okay, because you know, if an adult, a relative is talking to me, that's pretty much a direct message from God. And he says, okay, we're going to lock the door. We got to take a shower. We got to get cleaned up for this event. So I'm going to get naked, and I'm going to get in the shower, and you're going to take off all your clothes, and you're going to get into the shower. I am proud to this day that my number one personality characteristic is I don't do complain. I know how to open a locked door. Thank you very much. But the other learning for me in that event was, of course, never ever let yourself be alone with a not-so-funny uncle. Don't do that. Don't let that happen. So he was cool. He was an art teacher. He had this really great basement. He had all of this woodworking. You know, we could have all gone down there and amused and entertained ourselves and learned how to use very sharp objects and not cut off any body parts. He just wasn't safe. And my brother hadn't really dialed into that yet, but I remember thinking, I make sure I'm not around with him, and I make sure I don't leave my brother alone with him. So, that was okay. That was Christmas in my family. There was at least, my cousins had the most bestest board game ever in the world, which is called Mousetrap, which is kind of this Rube Goldberg invention thing, where you put together a whole bunch of plastic pieces, and then, you know, a little thing goes around, and it waxing a marble that goes down some steps, and then somebody jumps out of a bathtub, and this little mouse trap thing comes down, and it traps your pieces, and you're out of the game. Now, the board game itself is boring, honestly. We fought like tooth and nail over how to build this contraption. And of course, we definitely enjoyed it when the mousetrap came down. But, you know, when I'm looking back at the story, this is about 40 years ago or so, 50, almost 50. As a dispassionate adult, so, you know, I can not be 12 years and look at this story. I can now be pushing up onto 60 and look at that, and I'm going, of course Mousetrap was our favorite game. Look at what was going on in my family. Every single person in that house was in a mousetrap. They were all trapped. And they're all trying to figure out what they're going to do about it. So I have had a hard time with Christmas ever since. I just plain hate the season. Right about the middle of November, I start to get all of these negative emotions about, oh, guess what? Abandonment. And, you know, there's that TV Christmas family, and there's the family I have. But now I've been able to take another look at that because I've been invited to tell this story, and somebody said, oh, it should be Christmas themed. And I stand here and I realize I did have a family. It may have been an emotional wasteland, but there was a family there that weekend trying to be a family together, and all of their messy, bad life choices ways. And you know what? I miss them.